It is the morning of the 12th of July, 1943, and the earth south of a Russian town called Prokhorovka is shaking itself apart. Hundreds of tanks are grinding across the open steppe in a collision so vast that crews can barely see through the dust and the smoke and the burning grain. T-34s charge at full throttle to close the range before the heavier German guns can find them. Panzers and assault guns answer across a sea of wheat, and the air stinks of diesel and cordite and scorched steel. This is the climax of the largest tank battle in history, a brawl decided in hundreds of meters and split seconds. And then, on a low rise to the east, something rolls into view that none of these men have a name for. It is squat and angular, low to the ground, and it makes a sound no tank on this field has ever made, a smooth turbine whine instead of a clattering diesel roar. 14 of them. M1 Abrams main battle tanks, half a century out of their time. So here is the question. What happens when thermal optics and a 120mm gun arrive at the deadliest armored clash ever fought? Understand right away that this is not a fair fight, and pretending it were would insult you. Nothing at Kursk can see the Abrams before the Abrams sees it. Nothing here can reliably penetrate its frontal armor. Nothing can match the range at which it kills. If this was simply a question of who destroys whom, gun for gun, the video would end here. But that is the boring question, and it is the wrong one. A 1943 battlefield is not decided by the single best tank. It is decided by hundreds of them, by the fuel and the shells flowing up from the railheads, by reserves thrown in when the line bends. The real question is not whether 14 Abrams win their engagements. They will win nearly all of them. The real question is how long 14 perfect machines can matter in a battle measured in the thousands, and what runs dry first. To understand the trap, you first have to respect the world the Abrams has fallen into. By July 1943, armored warfare has reached a terrifying maturity. The Soviets field the T-34, one of the finest tanks of the war, fast and sloped and produced in staggering numbers alongside heavier KV types and a swelling tide of assault guns. The Germans bring the dependable Panzer IV with its long 75mm gun, the heavy Tiger with an 88 that can kill at well over a kilometer, and the new Panther with sloped armor and a high-velocity gun that outranges almost everything the Soviets can field. These are not primitive machines. The Tiger's frontal armor shrugs off most Soviet fire at normal combat range, which is exactly why T-34 crews are taught to sprint headlong into close quarters, where their speed and numbers can swarm a heavier enemy and strike the thinner flanks. Gunnery here is done through optical sights, good German glass and serviceable Soviet optics, ranged by eye and by tracer, and most kills happen well under a kilometer, because that is as far as a crew can reliably see and hit a moving target through dust and smoke. Crucially, both sides sit at the end of a real logistics tale. Fuel trains, ammunition dumps, repair workshops that drag damaged tanks back and weld them whole again, replacement crews funneled up to the front. Kursk is not won by the best tank. It is won by the side that can keep feeding the meat grinder longer. That truth is about to become the Abrams' real enemy. Now, the machine from the future. The M1 Abrams is, decades after it entered service, still among the most lethal tanks ever fielded. Its 120mm smoothbore gunfires, depleted uranium sabot rounds, dense darts that leave the muzzle far faster than any 1943 shell, and punch through armor that Tiger and Panther crews would consider impossible. Its composite armor, layered steel and ceramics and more, defeats the kind of hits that decide this battle, But the real sorcery is the sight. Thermal imaging lets the gunner see heat itself, picking out a running engine or a warm hull through smoke, through dust, through pitch darkness, at ranges out toward 3 kilometers, far beyond where any 1943 gunner can even find a target. A stabilized gun and a fire control computer mean the Abrams can shoot accurately on the move, while these tanks must stop to aim. Against Kursk, it is barely a tank. It is a sniper that cannot be seen. But here is the part the power fantasy always skips. Those advantages run on numbers, and the numbers are small. Roughly 40 main gun rounds aboard each tank. A gas turbine engine with a ferocious thirst for jet fuel that does not exist on this battlefield. No resupply, no spare tracks, no spare parts, no workshop, and crews who will get tired. Remember the fuel. It decides everything. The opening clash is exactly the slaughter you would expect, and for a while it is staggering. Long before any German or Soviet crew can make out the shapes on the rise, the Abrams gunners are already counting targets through their thermals. Warm engines, glowing against the cold morning steppe, like lamps in a dark room. The first sabot rounds cross the field faster than anything here has ever tracked. A Tiger, a tank that can duel almost anything at Kursk on equal terms, simply stops and begins to burn. Struck from a distance, its commander would have called absurd. Then a Panther, then another. The 120mm gun does not bracket its targets the way these crews must, walking shells in by tracer. It hits first time, then swings to the next. Panzer IVs that close to within their own killing range fire back, and the rounds that do strike skitter off composite armor that was never designed to be challenged by a 1943 gun. The Abrams crews shoot on the move, repositioning between shots. Dust hiding nothing from sights that red heat instead of light. To the men on the field, tanks are exploding for no visible reason, their own shells achieving nothing, an enemy they cannot locate, killing them across distances they did not think were possible. For a brief, terrible window, 14 machines rewrite the deadliest tank battle in history, and almost nothing touches them. This is the part everyone imagines. This is also the part that is about to end. Because now the complication arrives, and it does not come from the enemy. It comes from the gauges. Each Abrams carries only about 40 main gun rounds, and in a target-rich nightmare like Prokhorovka, with hundreds of tanks crowding every sight line, those 40 rounds vanish fast. A company that opens the battle-hammering targets at will is, within an engagement or two, scraping the bottoms of its ammunition racks, and there is no truck coming forward with more. No factory in 1943 makes a 120mm smoothbore round, let alone a depleted uranium dart. And then there is the engine, the gas turbine that makes the Abrams so smooth and so quick, drinks jet fuel at a rate that would horrify any 1943 quartermaster, and that fuel does not exist anywhere on this front. The refineries of the day crack crude into the diesel and gasoline that feed piston engines. They have never produced the kerosene a turbine demands, and they cannot learn how before the tanks read empty. There are no fuel trucks, no pipeline, no dump full of the right drums, because the right drums were never filled. Even repair is a fantasy. These are flying computers wrapped in armor, kept alive by diagnostic gear and trained technicians, and parts that do not exist within 1,000 kilometers or 50 years. Throw a track on the broken ground of the steppe, and there is no spare, no recovery workshop. Hand a stricken Abrams to the finest German engineers on the field, and they would be staring at a sealed black box. Brilliant men with the wrong tools and no manual. Every minute the company fights, it spends fuel and shells the entire industrial output of 1943 cannot replace by a single drop or a single round. The men it is humiliating do not need to defeat it. They only need to wait. So what is the honest verdict? Tank for tank, the Abrams company is untouchable. It can win every engagement it chooses to fight, kill tigers and panthers and T-34s at ranges they cannot answer, and take almost nothing in return. On a scoreboard of pure kills, the arithmetic is grotesque. Scores of 1943 tanks for each modern machine, perhaps more. But 14 tanks cannot hold a 40-kilometer front. They cannot be everywhere the breakthrough is happening, and at Kursk it is happening everywhere at once. The moment a tank empties its ammunition racks, it becomes a very expensive bystander. The moment its tanks run dry, it stops being the deadliest object on the steppe and becomes the most baffling piece of wreckage on the continent. Sitting silent in the wheat, while bewildered engineers fail to make sense of an engine that runs on a fluid they have never refined. The company wins its battles and changes the outcome of Kursk by almost nothing. The hundreds of other tanks fight on. The front grinds where it was always going to grind. The Abrams were a thunderbolt, and a thunderbolt strikes once and is gone. And that is what this impossible matchup actually teaches, the thing worth more than the spectacle. Kursk was never decided by the single best tank. It was decided by attrition, by reserves, by which side could replace its losses and keep its machines fueled and supplied through weeks of grinding combat. The Soviets won there not by fielding a better tank than the Tiger, but by absorbing punishment, holding their deep defenses, and committing fresh reserves the Germans could not match. A handful of perfect machines with no supply chain is a firework, brilliant and brief. This is the lesson real history keeps repeating. From wonder weapons that arrived too late and too few to win, to armies that destroyed everything in front of them and still lost the war behind them. Technology without a supply chain is fragile. Firepower without fuel is theater. The steppe was not won by the best gun in 1943. It was won by industry, by numbers, and by endurance. So if 14 perfect tanks change nothing at Kursk, what about a force built to dominate the sky over a battle just as decisive? Picture a flight of modern attack helicopters dropped over the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, or a single nuclear submarine loose among the fleets at Midway. Does overwhelming technology rewrite the outcome, or does the same cruel arithmetic of finite fuel and finite ammunition decide it all over again? That is the next simulation, and I genuinely want to know where you land before we run it. So tell me in the comments, which modern unit dropped into which historical battle do you most want to see next? The best suggestions become future episodes. If you like history with the rules left switched on, subscribe to Hartwell History because we are only getting started. The dust is settling over Prokhorovka now, and the battle, indifferent as ever, simply goes on without them.